Good afternoon to everybody. My warm welcome to all of you, and also my warm thanks to all of you who have made yourself available for this press conference of today. Welcome, and before we start, allow me to give you some practical information for our press conference of today. We are having a chat box below on the screen where it's possible to pass comments or eventually even technical issues. And our technical team will make it sure that they will try to fix whatever is needed. In our Q&A box, you can also ask content-related questions for the speakers. These questions will be then addressed during our press conference in our Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to write your questions throughout the entire webinar, and we will then take through them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important moment for our long-standing efforts to match environment, food security, and food safety together, and now even more importantly, in the context of the crisis that we have in Ukraine. It is without saying that many are starting to question what we have discussed and agreed on recently. And I would like to make it clear, and in that I think I share also what Madam Commissioner Kyriakides has recently said. This is a moment where we need to consider what are the pathways going forward. We should not question our targets and objectives that we know are set for making our production sustainable going forward and to secure resilient and sustainable food and feed production in Europe and globally going forward. And it goes without saying that without this sustainability, we will be facing even more difficulties going forward in the future. But this is a moment in our European politics and policy making where we should strategically consider what elements have we in our disposal to accelerate and what elements we need to adapt the pathway to get to the objectives that we have set for ourselves in the future. This press conference will answer 3 questions regarding both food security and food safety. Because the advanced techniques and products that we are going to discuss today, they are available immediately. And now we are confronted with a key and very responsible issue, how to renew our regulatory framework to put them in full scale and their potential in use. This is why I feel privileged to host this online conference today, which allows journalists to use general and detailed information on how our efforts toward Green Deal and Farm to Fork have to be prepared. As I stated, the European Commission's own website says that the topic we're going to discuss today, the potential of microbial plant protection products, are inherently safer than chemical pesticides. So let's use them. Let's please also refer to our efforts of last week when the European Parliament resolution has quite clearly put them into an equation of our immediate solutions. And along this line, I would like our speakers today and contributors to this conference to give you more details and better understanding what we are talking about and what the potential is like. The speakers in the press conference will highlight each angle of our food safety and security approach. From soil and environment degradation, from disease emergence, and towards an optimized and safe agricultural productivity through the most advanced technologies that EU should actively promote, not create administrative and regulatory burden, and share with all other regions. That is now critical, especially in the times where we are challenging with emerging food security issues. Having said that, I have the honor to introduce now our dear colleague, Mark Eyskens, the former Minister of State and former Prime Minister of Belgium, and him since many years being in direct consultation with key European stakeholders on the subject. He has also received a legal opinion on possibilities of the European Commission communication that was assisted by a law partner, Arnold Porter, and that deals with the results of our long discussions in Microbial Plant Protection Products Task Force. These two documents, which you have received in advance, identify which steps the European institutions and also member states at their level could immediately take to materialize the promise of a coexistence and development of safe, sustainable and natural plant protection products going forward and using the scale. After Professor Mark Eyskens, we will have other important speakers. We would welcome Mr. Melkert, the Vice Chair of the PA International Foundation and Senior Political Advisor to Microbial Plant Protection Products Task Force. We will then listen to a statement of the legal opinion of Arnold and Porter. The future of safe and cost-effective farming and the role of microbial production products will be highlighted by our dear colleague and president of CEJA, the Young Farmers Organization, Ms. Diana Lenzi, followed by a view of our dear colleague, Dr. Jobien Wind, who would seek you getting more knowledgeable about the ways how we could improve screening of chemical plant protection products and inclusion of some important testing elements related to nerve systems. We will conclude by a Dr. Willem Ravensberg, Corporate Senior Regulatory and Government Affairs Manager of Koppert BV, and he would get us more in-depth knowledge about microbial plant protection products and how they can improve growing wheat and cereal in a sustainable and scalable way in EU. Then we will reserve some time for replying your questions and answers. This panel will be chaired by Mr. Melkert, and I would come back to you, dear colleagues, with some closing remarks in more or less an hour from now. So thank you very much again for your participation. I'm very much looking forward for having the opportunity to share with you this important and promising agenda that is currently reflecting to the challenges that we are heading to. And by this, I would be passing the floor to Mr. Eyskens.
The working of Regulation EC 1107/2009. I emphasize the word working because, as my friends at Arnold and Porter have stated, no change in this regulation is required to secure a fast-track access to the market of safe and effective microbial plant protection products. It would testify of enormously appreciated and applauded goodwill of the European Commission if these elements would indeed be used as part of the current process of improving and making more sustainable Europe's agriculture. I was pleased in the past to meet the then Health Commissioner, Andriukaitis, who promised to realize the required and requested communication directly emanating from European Parliament resolutions called for by him. I am convinced that the current and dramatic circumstances in Europe will assist today's Health Commissioner, Dr. Kyriakidis, to finish what was started. I shall be pleased to bring these two documents to the attention of the Presidents of the European Council, the European Parliament and the European Commission, asking them to create the right and forward-looking dynamic balance between chemical and microbial plant protection products. I wish a very fruitful debate that allows citizens to understand and support the use of both documents. Thank you, and over to the press conference chair, Mr. Ad Melkert. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark Eyskens. Thank you, Mark Eyskens. I would like to give the floor to Karen Mason with a presentation of Arnold and Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Melkert. This is the legal opinion summary by Arnold and Porter. The task force welcomes the Commission's efforts to facilitate market entry of microbial pesticides within the existing legal framework set out in Regulation 1107 and its implementing regulations. However, the task force submits that more can be done. In this regard, it took legal advice from Arnold and Porter, and it would like to take a few minutes to explain what more the Commission could do. In its legal opinion, Arnold and Porter submits that the Commission could supplement the existing legislation by issuing a communication that would A, advocate certain practical action points for Member States within the framework of the existing legislation, and B, float preliminary ideas concerning amendments to the existing legislation. To be more specific, Arnold and Porter makes the following points. To begin with, Regulation 1107 is, in part, based on Article 168 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which covers public health. This treaty provision stipulates, among other things, that the Commission may take any useful initiative to promote the coordination of the Member States' public health policies, for instance, by adopting guidelines or discussing best practices. That is broad language, but Article 77 of Regulation 1107 picks up on it. It specifically empowers the Commission to, quote, adopt or amend technical and other guidance documents such as explanatory notes or guidance documents on the content of the application concerning microorganisms, pheromones, and biological products for the implementation of this regulation, end of quote. In Arnold and Porter's view, Article 77 therefore enables the Commission to liaise with the Member States via the advisory procedure in order to discuss with them practical action points or clarifications that can contribute to quicker market entry and increased use of microbial pesticides within the framework of the current legislation. Some examples, not an exhaustive list though. The first one concerns the definition of low-risk active substances in pesticides. Point 5 in Annex 2 of the regulation only specifies when an active substance is not low risk, but the drafters of that point only had chemical active substances in mind. It should be possible to clarify that microbial pesticides can be presumed to be low risk if they are not a human pathogen and do not contribute to antimicrobial resistance. Second, Member State authorities should be able to confirm the low-risk nature of microbial pesticides at an earlier stage, meaning the stage of the draft assessment report. Third, under the current regulation, the entire approval/market authorization process for pesticides has largely been in the hands of chemical experts, given the regulation's focus on the health risks involved in the use of chemical pesticides. Given that the EU is now striving towards a 50% reduction in the use of these pesticides, it would make eminent sense to set up dedicated expert teams for chemical and microbial pesticides. As said, these are just 3 examples of action points that can usefully be taken forward under the existing legislation. Other action points would require amendments to that legislation, but nothing prevents the Commission from floating preliminary ideas with a view to igniting a discussion with the Member States. Just one example. Until June 2016, Article 30, Paragraph 1 of Regulation 1107 enabled Member States to grant pesticides containing an active substance not yet approved within the time limits set forth in Articles 9 to 13 of the regulation, provisional market authorizations for 3 years. 6 years down the road, it is worth considering the extension of this possibility for the benefit of microbial pesticides. Obviously, this requires the use of the regulatory procedure, but once again, nothing prevents the Commission from sounding out the Member States in this regard. One final thought in Arnold Porter's legal opinion. Given the strong focus of the current regulation on chemical pesticides, it would make a lot more sense to have separate regulations applying side by side to these 2 entirely different types of pesticides, with assessment criteria, expertise and procedures tailored to each type of these pesticides. The Commission could kick off that process by conducting an impact assessment later this year with a view to demonstrating the need for such a separate regulation. This was the statement by Arnold Porter. The floor is back to Mr. Melkert.
Well, thank you very much, Karen Mason. This presentation outlines how the European Commission has all the necessary instruments and the political duty to now publish the proposed draft communication, or at least key elements thereof, in a guideline or another expression of policy implementation. In this connect, it is worthwhile to refer to a European Union Court of Justice decision of 2015, and I quote, "The regulation reflects the balance desired by the legislature between an improvement in the functioning of the internal market by the harmonization of the rules concerning the placing on the market and the use of biocidal products on the one hand, and the preservation of a high level of protection of human and animal health and the environment on the other hand. In the exercise of the powers delegated to it by the legislature, the Commission cannot call that balance into question." End of quote. After 4 European Parliament resolutions calling for an immediate fast-track access for MPPPs to the European market, there seems no cause for the executive to call into question the balance as indicated in those resolutions. So this is really the challenge for today's discussion, to get an answer to this and to get a recognition of the urgency to get that answer. May I remind all participants that if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can write these in the Q&A box and we will address them during our Q&A session at the end of this press conference. I now would like to give the floor to Diana Lenzi, a wine grower from Tuscany, an entrepreneur, and on top of that, president of CEJA, the European Council of Young Farmers. Since 2008, she manages the family's winery, and today she will outline the future of safe and cost-effective farming in the European Union and what role microbial plant production products can play in it. Ms. Lenzi, we're very, very happy to have you in our meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. I would first like to thank our hosts, Member of Parliament Martin Hlaváček, as well as the Microbial Plant Protection Products Task Force for having given me the opportunity to be here today and to bring the voice of young farmers, bring our ambitions, bring our challenges into this conversation. As you have said, I am a wine grower from Tuscany. Since 2008, I have been running our family farm, and I have started my own mission, my own journey towards more sustainable farming practices. And trust me, this has been a very complicated journey, not a simple one. And every day, I must say, I fight the odds in keeping what I consider my parents' legacy alive. So I know on my own skin what it means to be a young farmer today and what we really need to be able to succeed in what I believe is a mission for all. And since last year, I also have the immense privilege of being the president of the European Council of Young Farmers, a body that represents over 23 young farmers associations from all over Europe. And even if we are what I consider a minority, because we're only about 2.8 million young farmers in Europe, we are the ones who will be carrying out this mission for the future. And so I think it's very important to be able to have this space to bring our voice, our challenges, our ambitions. Because we are in an ever-changing and challenging world, and the challenges we are facing as farmers seem to be getting greater and greater every day. May it be just about, and just seems really the understatement of the year, about adapting and mitigating to climate change. May it be preserving our natural resources and still delivering high-quality products and facing these market disruptions that make our day-to-day activity more uncertain and inherent to all our farming activities. Facing this, trying to win this, this battle that we seem to be fighting against odds is our primary objective. And it is to build a multidimensional sustainability at farm level that is able to lead to a real economic viability while ensuring food safety and delivering ecosystem services for the greater good of the whole society. And because I believe we are all in this together, the farmers, the consumers, civil society at whole, this is our battle to win together. And the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy in this context really need to understand and address the constraints that we're facing. They need to answer and give us the tools that we need to reach out and manage to succeed in these important challenges, giving us enabling tools and help us reach sustainability while keeping in sight at all times that our economic stability is the fuel, the primary condition of our capacity for action. If we are not economically stable, we will not succeed. Because we, the young farmers, are truly the ones who are taking stock of the progress that we have in the horizon of 2050. We are building farms, we're creating our future, and we have both the right and the duty to think outside the box and really build a different, reshape the future of our agricultural systems. A future where vulnerabilities are addressed by ensuring our environmental balance and creating that solid economic framework that would attract new actors into the sector. This is the pathway that we as CEJA have taken. For the next 2 years, we are building what we call our own sustainability road to farming in the EU. We're looking at every step, every factor, every element that constitutes our farming systems and searching the ways to improve, make it more sustainable while delivering also a rewarding food system for all. Us, as farmers of today and tomorrow with civil society at large, are truly at the center of this discussion. And of course, in this context, finding all the possible alternatives, all the possible solutions to improve our farming systems and to broaden that toolkit as farmers is absolutely fundamental. And this is why we welcome and we exhort the Commission to accelerate the approval process of the biological plant protection products that can really be an essential tool in sustainable agriculture in Europe. As components in effective integrated pest management, together with further investment in knowledge and good practice sharing, peer-to-peer knowledge, they can most definitely contribute to environmentally responsible production systems, which is the goal we are all working to achieve in the European Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy. So we need a legal framework that enables us to act and that can pave the way to a more sustainable farming future. Thank you very much for your attention and again for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Diana Lenzi. You're really speaking on behalf of Europe's young farmers that may be a minority now, but in fact are representing the majority's common sense view already. And without you and your people in your organization, nobody can fulfill Europe's Green Deal or the Farm to Fork strategy. You should be listened to, and I promise we shall do anything in our power to ensure that you will be heard. Thank you again. Allow me now, dear colleagues, to introduce Dr. Jobien Wind, Policy Officer of the Parkinson Association. As a professional who dealt with chemicals at some stages in her life and as a Parkinson's patient herself, we're very proud and honored to give her the floor today. Dr. Wind, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. I have Parkinson's disease, so please forgive me if I stutter or hesitate. This is part of the deep impact of this disease on my life. And I cry very easily, so I hope you will not see this today. My name is Jobien Wind. I studied biochemistry and worked as a scientist for 8 years. Most of my life I worked as a business coach, and since 2 years I work as the Advocacy and Policy Officer for the Dutch Parkinson's Association. As Professor Bas Bloem stated, Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing brain disease in the world, including Europe. Numerous European and other international scientific studies consistently show a link between the occurrence of Parkinson's disease and prior exposures to pesticides. This is not a mere association. Exposure of rodents to the pesticides causes degeneration of the nerve cells in the substantia nigra, which is the brain area involved in causing Parkinson's disease. Farmers show a higher percentage of PD prevalence, but also people living nearby sprayed fields. At the moment, I'm 59 years. I was diagnosed with PD when I was 52, but with hindsight, I have had symptoms of PD from my late teens. Unaccountable muscle ache, obstipation, pain when trying to sleep. Parkinson's is harsh because one keeps on losing functions like losing muscle strength, losing smell and taste, getting tremors, problems with walking and balance, problems with blood pressure, swallowing, losing one's voice, but also mental problems like losing cognition or initiative, getting depressed, having anxiety attacks. It's not an easy disease. For me, I suspect that peeling flower bulbs in summer in a shed all day with no ventilation when I was 12 has contributed to my Parkinson's. Flowers are exposed to a lot of different pesticides. Also, during my PhD, I worked with pesticides in the lab, even when I was pregnant. I'm not the only one who's exposed to pesticides. Parkinson's disease numbers are exploding. At the Dutch PD Association, we have documented over 150 stories of people with Parkinson's who suspect pesticides cause their PD. Half of them farmers and half of them are bystanders. I stand before you, ladies and gentlemen, not for me. I already have PD. I stand before you for our children, for those who cannot choose not to be exposed. I urge you to rigorously improve the evaluation procedure both for individual chemical pesticides, but also for cocktails of such pesticides, for all European citizens who are at risk because pesticides has found their way in our food chain. I also stand before you for all the preventable cases of this debilitating disease, for our farmers who really shouldn't be the ones to fall ill while providing us with our daily food. I urge you to proactively support them in finding new, sustainable, innovative ways for crop management ASAP. For example, by securing access to the market for low-risk alternatives. For me, it's too late. But if I can make you listen to the heart of the matter and act accordingly, at least that will not have been in vain. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jobien. I'm particularly touched and inspired by your words, and certainly also your last words. And we owe it to you that your suffering and the suffering of all those other persons with diseases that can be prevented.
It's not only Parkinson's, yeah.
Yeah. By better agricultural approaches will not be in vain. And unfortunately, we see the curves, the graphs rising, and we know that
the age is falling.
Exactly.
13 year.
And we know that we can do something about it, and that's really the heart of the matter of what we're discussing today. So thank you again. Thank you very much. And our next speaker, dear colleagues, is Dr. Willem Ravensberg, member of the Microbial Plant Protection Products Task Force and Corporate Senior Regulatory and Governmental Affairs Manager of the Dutch microbial producer Koppert. Let me recall that the famous magazine National Geographic referred to Koppert as one of the reasons why the Netherlands is the world's second largest producer after the US of agricultural products. I've understood that Koppert are successful in marketing all of their products except in the European Union. That's really flabbergasting. May I invite you, Mr. Ravensberg, to explain to us why and what to do about this. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melkert, and also my thanks to Martin Hlaváček for hosting our meeting today. Let me start with a personal touch on this subject. My own experience in research and registration of microorganisms has just passed, last year, 40 years. I witnessed the start of biocontrol with a handful of products, and over the years they have extended to hundreds and hundreds. So research and development delivered its innovative products, but the key question is, have they reached the EU market? Many products and companies have not made it. That's why I did, after 25 years of working in the biocontrol industry, a PhD thesis on this very subject with the title, A Roadmap to the Successful Development and Commercialization of Microbial Plant Protection Products. It aims to help academics, startups, and SMEs to be successful. But what is not in the hands of a product developer is the registration process. That's the job of the authorities. Did they adapt? Did they see the new innovative biologicals coming? Did they develop new methods to assess the risk of these new products? No, they did not. At least not enough and not in time. Even to date, European Commissioner of Health, Dr. Kyriakides, formally acknowledges that national authorities still do not have the appropriate knowledge or experience to deal with microbial plant protection products. Since at least 5 years, the majority of new active substances submitted in the EU are biologicals. Every authority knows this. But have the procedures not been adapted to this trend? One could speculate on the reasons. Is it fear for the unknown? Interest of vested industry and its connections that cause delay? Is it lack of expertise and experts? Lack of resources? Why not repair this in time? Did we not see the negative effects of chemicals on biodiversity, soil fertility, pollinators, health of farmers, as we just heard? It seems we did, as many group of chemicals were taken from the market, but new chemicals entered and replaced them. And again, we learned about their negative effects. Why not go for more biological and natural solutions? We have seen these developments in other parts of the globe. We can't easily repair the past, but we have a chance to create a new future, a very near good future. The alternative products are here and are being developed, as we see in the United States, in Brazil, and even in China. They all have many hundreds of biologicals on the market. However, in the EU, we are far behind, and every day the gap is growing. As an example, our subsidiary in Brazil treats about 5 million hectares with biologicals, while we only do a few % of this in Europe. And we anticipate much stronger growth in Brazil compared to Europe, and you can imagine our investments will reflect this. However, these products used in Brazil could be used in the US, in the EU as well, and we can improve them quickly. But of course, it needs a dedicated system for these products with experienced scientists in the field of biology and ecology. The European Commission has recently adapted the data requirements for applications of microbials. They suggest it will also speed up approvals, but they have not adapted the system. The procedures with its long timelines, and they have not prioritized the biologicals to achieve the goals of the Farm to Fork strategy and the Green Deal, a more sustainable agriculture that our society needs and wants. This task force was established about a year ago, based on the concern that 2 microbial plant protection products are going to be lost in the renewal process. 2 products, one based on a bacterium and one on a fungus, that have their use in arable crops, like cereals, as wheat. They've been used over 15 years as seed treatment against soil diseases and against foliar diseases. They're about the only ones approved for arable crops, where we desperately need alternatives to chemicals. Koppert may lose its products completely and all our investments of millions of euros. The products have been applied in wheat, rye, barley, oats, and in vegetables like carrots and peas. Product authorizations have been granted in 15 member states. Over time, these products have been used on 3.5 million hectares, and 1.3 million chemical fungicides have been substituted. The Czech company Biopreparati has developed a biofungicide based on this fungus, and it has been approved since 1995 and is now authorized in 22 member states and has been used on more than 800,000 hectares, replacing an equivalent of 800,000 liters of chemical fungicides. And the products are used in cereals, oilseed rape, vegetables, and grapevines. In some markets, these products are the only non-chemical solutions available. Chemical fungicides are disappearing from the market, and the toolbox of farmers is getting emptier all the time. The products have the potential to increase strongly in coming years because of that. They are the few biological products for arable crops where IPM and biocontrol is very much needed. And now they are threatened to be taken from the market just because the wrong questions have to be answered. Questions appropriate for synthetic chemicals, but not for living microorganisms. And we can't answer these questions, hence the potential withdrawal. But they were approved 25 years ago, and the member states that evaluated them recently approved them again. However, EFSA and the Commission ignore this. So my conclusion is there's a remarkable and a fundamental mismatch in the authorization system. The newly updated data requirements will become official by the end of the year. Whether they really will improve the process, we will only know 5 to 7 years from now. 5 to 7 years from today. This comes very close to 2030, the timeline of the ambitious farm-to-fork strategy. But still, EFSA, member states and the Commission need to build and develop their expertise on biologicals and improve and speed up the procedures. So the only remedy today is a fast-track procedure. As Arnold and Porter demonstrated, this can be done within the framework and without changing Regulation 1107. Anyone who chooses a longer road plays in the hands of further delay, more research, and more time for chemical pesticides to continue their sometimes harmful use. Well, Commissioner Kyriakides recently said, today we are bringing good news to European farmers to help their transition away from the use of chemicals. Biological products can protect their crops with less risk to human health and the environment. End of quote. And on the Commission's website it is stated, they, meaning microbial plant protection products, are also inherently safer than chemicals. Indeed, microbials are safe and effective. They're already more than 50 years on the global market, and never, I repeat, never has one product been withdrawn due to harmful effects anywhere in the world. And our society, our farmers need them for sustainable agriculture and for reasons of biodiversity, soil fertility, clean water, but also food security and food safety. So why are we so behind in Europe? Why such a long registration process? Can SMEs wait so long after years of investment? Is that how innovations are treated in the EU? Why are companies moving away to these other markets? Which of course is a rhetorical question. We, as the biocontrol industry, want to help. We know our organisms best, and we have experience in other jurisdictions that can provide solutions. This is why we established the task force and drafted the legal opinion and the draft communication, which are presented today. We call on the media to verify each and every word I've used, and on that basis to considering challenging the European Commission to put its money where its mouth is. The European Commission has shown to the Russian aggressor that in Ukraine how unified and determined it can act. Commissioner Kyriakides has declined the effort by industry and the EU member states to hold elements of the Green Deal and the farm-to-fork strategy. This is the season of change. This is the time to prioritize human lives over prosperity. This is the time to prioritize human lives and prosperity over short-lived perceived profitability. This is the moment to finally use Regulation 1107 to make our agriculture more safe and more sustainable. What are we waiting for? Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you, Willem Ravensberg. And thank you for all your work with the company in bringing this all to our attention and fighting tooth and nail to get it done. And we can't wait for 5 or 7 years more. That must be clear to everyone. It's, as a European citizen, I find it really dramatic that the most advanced agricultural technologies invented in Europe are restricted to be used outside Europe. And in this connect, I refer to the words of former Belgian Prime Minister Eyskens in his incarnation as a top economist, where he cautions all of us about the risk of oligopolistic structures that appear to effectively delay the marketing of what they may see as competitive products that shorten the economic lifetime of their sometimes antiquated and potentially damaging products for both human health and the environment. Or in even more plain words, it is, in my view, the chemical industry lobby that strangles innovation and SMEs, and in doing so harming health and environment for European citizens like me and you and everybody listening in this webinar. So let's now go to the Q&A part. You can still add questions if you wish. I'd like to invite all speakers to turn on their cameras. We are joined by Mr. David Cary, Science Advisor to the Microbial Plant Protection Products Task Force, to address questions related to scientific or regulatory matters. And let's start with, I've already a number of questions. Let's start with the question by Samira Dunker. She asks, what is the added value of microbial PPPs for agriculture? Aren't the chemical pesticides cheaper than the microbials? And let me ask Willem maybe to take this up immediately.
Okay, well, one of the questions was to my colleague in Brazil was, why is it growing so fast in Brazil compared to other parts of the world? While Brazil is not very well known for its environmental friendly behavior, let's put it that way. The main reason is there's not enough efficient chemicals, or resistance to chemicals develops very quickly. So biologicals are used as good tools, and farmers use them more and more because the chemicals don't work. And the resistance management is very important also to keep the combination biologicals and chemicals in an IPM system alive. Secondly, the question on the cost of chemicals. Well, we always state chemicals are put on the markets too cheaply because there are external costs on our environment, on our health, that are not paid by the polluter, by the products itself, but by our society. And our biologicals are part of nature. They are broken down by nature, which is not the case in many chemicals. Nature knows how to deal with them. They don't accumulate over time. And microbials are everywhere, even in our body, and they are very, very important. So this importance comes back to improving soil fertility, keeping the water clean, keeping pollinators alive, etc., etc.
Yeah, climate and the environment is all about the external costs that are just not borne by the originators, by those that bring the cost to society. So that's a very, very important point. Let me go to a question by Gabriela Galindo, and thank you for being also in this webinar. She asked a question to Diana Lenzi. Does CEJA think that young farmers need IPM plus agroecology and biopesticides to overtake the share of the market currently held by chemical and synthetic pesticides, especially to protect nature and prevent diseases such as Parkinson's? If so, when would be a realistic timeline to achieve this, especially for farmers in areas where chemical pesticides play a big role, such as wine growing? Well, Diana, this is really a big question to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this question. I would also just like to take 1 second to apologize for any background noise you might hear. I have both my kids are at home sick today. So what we need as young farmers is alternatives. I truly believe in the power of science, and science is giving us so many more insights as to what the correlation can be between harmful substances, diseases, and that we need to acknowledge this. We need to not fear the power of science, and that advancement comes from having a greater understanding and finding the new solution, the new viable alternative. So we need research and science on our side. We need, as I said, we really need an enabling framework in which science can work, where we can bring in alternatives of all forms and shapes. I'm very open to everything that comes from agroecology. I'm also as open to everything that comes from new techniques, because I really believe that the challenge is so great that we really can't close any door right now. When it comes to the timeline, well, we are, as we know, on a ticking clock. We're on a ticking clock when it comes to climate change. We are on a ticking clock when it comes to food security. We are on a ticking clock when it comes to ensuring healthy environments for the farmers and for civil society at large. So I feel this is a great challenge that the commission, this commission and the next commission have to really take into their hands. That is not through easy fixes that we can tackle these problems. There needs to be a lot of, and I know this is going to sound strange, common sense and reason and practicability in the solutions put forward. But we definitely need, we need to open doors. We need to enable young farmers to take all the possible solutions, and especially, yes, help them farm in a safer way, also providing safer products. So I don't know if that answered completely the question, but the sooner the better is, of course, probably the answer I would have to give in a nutshell.
Yeah, and let me ask from my side, also as a former policymaker, that it would be more than natural and indeed very urgent that the farm to fork strategy, also in this particular area, would provide for subvention mechanisms to make substitution possible as soon as they are available, as soon as alternatives are available, because it doesn't serve any purpose to wait any minute longer, basically, than to make it happen. So in that sense, farmers that are now dependent still on pesticides should be helped to make that step in an accelerated way.
Yes, if I am given only a target as to what I need to reduce, but we don't understand that in the middle, there's actually a farming practice that needs to be achieved, which is the protection of the plant, then I am making it impossible for the farmer to farm. I think the farmer needs to find more information. We need to train farmers. We need to start from schools. We need to really reshape even the whole knowledge system that is behind the farming community. So I know that farmers have to do a lot in this, in opening their views, their visions, and their capacity also to interpret their plants, their land, and the necessities they need. But at the same time, when farmers use plant protection products, it's because they're trying to solve a problem, an issue, a disease that is infesting their crops. And so they need to know, what can I use? What farming practice, what alternative product could I use that has the same effect?
Yeah, that's hitting a very important point, that the training and knowledge sharing is indeed something that should have started yesterday and the day before yesterday already, and is indeed something that could be accelerated a lot through the communication also that we advocate for, that the European Commission would now publish. That's the first step, even before any regulation would be adjusted. We can do it now, and we should do it now. So thank you very much, Diana. And actually, in referring to the regulation, I come to another question by Samira Dunker. She asks, what's the main problem with the current approval procedure for microbial plant protection products? Why does it take so long between the start of the application and the final approval? I think this is for David Cary to take up. David, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ad. And just to add to what Willem and also Diana had said there, we're seeing already that farmers in other parts of the world are getting access to these microbials, and they're using them, and they're using them successfully. And therefore, we need to make those available now to our European farmers. We can't wait. We need to do it now. And we have tended to look at the side, when we've been regulating plant protection products, we've been looking at chemicals. We've tried to fit the biologicals, and particularly the microbials, into the same regulatory pathway and streams. It hasn't been successful. We're now going through and we're changing data requirements. it may give some more specific pointers, but it doesn't answer all the questions. And this is where the problem lies, that what we've been doing, we've tried to regulate them in the same way. We need to think differently. We can't think as chemists, and we can't think of big multi-use products. What we've got to look at here is often they're orphan or niche products, and they can't go through the same stream with the same people taking the same amount of time to do it. We need to change it now, and the science is already there. What we need to do is make sure we've enacted that. And we need it now, either in this presidency or in the next presidency. We can't wait beyond that, because as Diana rightly points out, we won't meet those objectives for climate change, for farm to fork. We need to change now.
Thanks very much, David. I see now there is a question by Ralph Udo Ehlers. And he says, Willem mentioned that microorganisms are safe. So why does the EU use Regulation 1107/2009, adapted to regulate risky synthetic chemical pesticides, to authorize safe biocontrol agents? Willem, could you take that up?
You know, I just mentioned that I've been working in this field for 40 years. And in the beginning, I could understand that the authorities were not equipped to deal with microorganisms. But over the years, we've seen them coming to the market in other regions of the world, and slowly and steadily through this difficult system in Europe. We as an industry has evolved tremendously, and I always said innovative products need innovative regulations. But we try to fit them into the chemistry regulations, and that was a basic mistake. We see the same happening now with biostimulants, which are a new group of products on the market, and where again microorganisms, who can be very, very useful in helping reducing artificial fertilizers, are not dealt with correctly, and there's no system to bring them to the market. So why is this fear of microorganisms? I think because we don't have the right people doing that. Ecologists. I've worked with the Dutch CTCB, the authority that approves products, and they have installed, after a lot of political pressure, I must say, a so-called green team with specialists in the field of microorganisms, natural substances, pheromones, and through such a system, you can judge these applications much faster. 35 years ago, the US did that, and they have separated a stream, biologicals versus the chemistry. And we see other countries now adapting this USA system. And it's really very difficult to understand why Europe has not done this. And we're completely blocked by the difficult chemical procedures. I just have to mention glyphosate. And now we even have to wait 3 years to be able to submit a dossier of a microbial, because our authorities are too busy with the chemistry. But these ambitious policies, strategies, reducing chemicals, but not allowing alternatives to the market is a fundamental mistake, and we need to repair that as soon as possible.
Thank you. Look, I was puzzled. I'm puzzled actually these days also by what's going on within the European Commission. For me, actually, the acceleration of the approval of the use of microbials is a test case to the farm to fork strategy by Commissioner Timmermans. It would be beyond me to understand that this could not be decided upon very soon if we are to be serious about the farm to fork strategy. And it also struck me that the European Parliament again expressed what the direction that it wants the Commission to take by the resolution recently adopted, and I quote, that at the level of production, strengthened measures and incentives will be needed to build resilience, such as by increasing circularity and input self-sufficiency, while not undermining the productive capacity and competitiveness of EU agriculture, fisheries and aquaculture, moving towards precision farming, developing and fast-tracking access to markets of alternative proteins, organic fertilizers, microbial protection of crops, and new genome techniques, etc. So the majority is very clearly pointing in which direction this should go. How on earth is it possible that we have lost already 13 precious years, basically, in moving into that direction? Well, if not now, when? I see there's a question by Anne Steenberg, I should say, in my own language, I suppose. And she asks, is the difference in regulation of microorganisms between EU and non-EU apparent in all areas where microorganisms are intentionally added to the food chain, such as food additives, probiotics, biostimulants, or is it a specific issue for plant production products? Willem or David, could you respond to that?
I will start, David. As far as I know, it's only the case, or mostly the case in plant protection products, indeed. Biostimulants are quite new as a product category, and I see that Europe is struggling with it, but also in other regions of the world, there's no real good legislation on that. On the other hand, we also, and I even asked the Commission a question, because we see that microorganisms are becoming very important in these areas that Anna mentions, but also even in medicines for human beings. I'm talking about bacteriophages against bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics and that we can't treat anymore. Also there, Europe is very behind, and I think other parts of the world still as well, that we have sort of a fear for microorganisms. While we use them in our food, since human beings are alive, you could say, and evolved with them, every day we eat them, they're on our food, they're on our body, in our body. So we should be more practical and more have an open mind to using microbials. And we very well know that the risky ones are there, but we know them. There's a lot of science on that, and also in health science, of course. So it seems plant protection products are the is an area that's mainly advanced with working with microorganisms, but other areas it's coming as well, and we need to adapt our legislative picture of this very, very quickly.
Thank you, Willem. David, anything to add on this?
Yeah, just to supplement what Willem had said there, and quite rightly points out that there seems to be this special area of focus on plant protection, but Willem has talked about other uses, and indeed EFSA have had a comparison where they look at safe uses of microbials and they compare them one to the other and allow that to happen. But we are seeing an increased use of microbials in complementary medicine, ordinary medicine, also in probiotics and feed additives. It's being used everywhere, but there is not the scare that there is in plant protection because of our experiences that we've had with dealing with plant protection chemical products. So there is this automatic bias to be looking negatively in this area. But Willem rightly points out that we know the bad players, the microorganisms that are pathogens of human health. They're well known and identified. There aren't new ones. So it's something that we can proceed with safety on.
Yeah, and it's again something that that is really puzzling, that whereas the European Union was hailed worldwide as taking a big step forwards, really really imposing the agenda on the globe when it comes to the digital market strategy, that when it comes to this market, we are really lagging behind other major players. And that is only to be explained by, say, European domestic factors and players that get a kind of access and a kind of priority that they shouldn't get anymore, because there's a new world that we want to build. So it's really high time that something is going to change here. And this brings me actually, because I don't think that there are other questions right now, but it brings me to a question also to our first and final speaker of this meeting, Martin Hlaváček, because this is really about the way forward. We have heard statements that show a unique combination of regulatory, legal, environmental, health and industrial facts and insights. We expect the European Commission to not only consider these legitimate and well-prepared calls, but also to include those in a process of tangible change. And indeed, the next few months will be crucial for the future of Europe's and indeed the world's agri-food sector. Europe should now take a new step. The largest EU member state should, of course, play a big role in that. And we count on the institutions, the European Parliament that I've mentioned already, but also the next presidency, the Czech presidency in the second part of this year, to really make something happen. Now, I think that it would be worth to refer to the offer by the task force to organize a science conference, to really invite everyone to listen to the analysis, to give input to the analysis, maybe to criticize the analysis. Let there be also a critical attitude to what is being proposed by the task force on the use of microbials, but let there be agreement in the end on what can and should be done. And my question to Martin is whether this is something that could, or maybe even should, be taken up by the Czech presidency. And in handing to you the floor, Martin, let me also underscore how important your role and the role of your colleagues in Parliament has been to times and again knock on the door of the Commission. It has been closed for much too long, since 2009. It has been opening somehow, but it should be fully opened in the very near future. And I trust you, but also the Czech government will play a key role in opening that door. I hand the floor to you.
Yes, thank you very much for all participants of participating in our today's press conference. First of all, I would like to thank you, Ed, for leading our discussion and for allowing everyone to effectively participating in this press conference. And my gratitude goes without any doubt to all the journalists that have joined us over the past hour. I would like to give my warm thanks to Jobien, to Arnold Porter's work, to CEJA President Diana Lenzi, and also to Dr. Ravensberg, because I think the inputs were very informative to us. And allow me by concluding with saying that we cannot afford anymore to stay behind the global developments. We are accumulating these mistakes along the pathway. We're not just talking here about microbial plant protection. We could say the same about alternative fertilizers, alternative proteins, novel foods, new genomic techniques, animal feed additives. And I truly believe that the time is now. We are not asking for a revolution. We are asking for an opportunity that is based on technological neutrality that is available to our farmers and producers as a part of their toolbox.